Hey, Dollars and Change listeners, it's Pete Krull, and I wanted to apologize to you. The episode you're about to watch with Dianna Cohen, we had some issues with audio, and so you're probably going to hear some echo. And unfortunately, I recorded this in person in California, and so I don't have the ability to go back out there right now and get it re-recorded. So instead, we're just hoping that you can deal with the bad audio and that we've learned a lesson in terms of how to set up the microphones next time. Thanks for being a Dollars and Change listener, and we look forward to providing you with more episodes in the near future. Thank you.
Hey, it's Pete Krull, and we are back again with another episode of Dollars and Change, the expert's guide to sustainable and responsible investing. I am in Los Angeles and attending the Future Proof Conference, and I'm lucky enough to have been introduced to a new friend, Dianna Cohen, who is the CEO and co-founder of the Plastic Pollution Coalition. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start out talking a little bit about, I had a chance to watch your TED Talk, and it was really inspiring. And I'm interested in you conveying your story, your origin story, how you went from being an artist to being an advocate.
Yeah, so I grew up here in Southern California and spent a lot of time in the Pacific Ocean. When I was in middle school and high school, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer, and it was estrogen receptive, which didn't mean anything to me as a teenager. But now I understand that the chemicals used to make plastics, plasticizing chemicals, bisphenols, phthalates, have been identified as endocrine disruptors. And so they affect our endocrine system and they feed potentially breast cancer, brain cancer, prostate cancer, have been linked to obesity and diabetes, and are linked to fertility issues. And again, we can talk more about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I was studying science, biology, and art at UCLA. I was a biology major. I began making work. Initially, my artwork was painting based and very kind of literal drawing, which came out of the sciences. But then I started to make work that was collage based using brown paper bags, kind of deconstructing them, cutting them up, sewing them back together. And at some point, I cut up a bag that had a botanical image of a dandelion and the name written in Latin on it and sewed that into a piece and had this eureka moment where I thought, oh my gosh, plastic.
Yeah.
And so I started making work, cutting up plastic bags and sewing them back together and reconstructing them using text and images that I found on the bags to convey things that I wanted to talk about.
Right.
I didn't start making the work as an advocate or an activist. I began making the work just because I found the material omnipresent and somehow compelling and colorful, and I'm a fauvist, so I love really colorful things. And then slowly, after working with the material for 8 years, which I talked briefly about in my TED Talk, some of my pieces, some of the bags and some of my pieces started to fissure or break apart. And I became interested in what was happening there, like the science brain clicked in.
Yeah.
So
What's breaking down?
what's breaking down and what are plastic bags made out of? And it turns out that 99% of plastic is made out of fossil fuels.
Right. And it's everywhere, right? You know, you can't go to the grocery store, at least in North Carolina, where I am, they're offering them, and every time they try to ban them, industry comes in and says, we don't want to do that.
Well, some of the biggest manufacturers are actually based in South and North Carolina. Yeah. But so, and it's not that the plastic's evil. It's interesting now for me because I've been making artwork out of it for 35 years. So, and showing those pieces in galleries and foundations and museums and using my artwork as a kind of jumping off point to be able to help talk about the issue.
Right.
Basically what happened is when I started to see what was happening with the material, I did a deeper dive and learned that it was made out of oil, that it was made out of fossil fuels, which I hadn't known. It's interesting when you think back to, like in my childhood, the arrival of plastic bags being offered to you in a market. And the phrase was paper or plastic.
Right.
And the concept was that you were saving a tree by choosing the plastic without anyone talking about what the plastic was made out of, because the public doesn't know in general what plastic is made out of, and they don't know that plastic's bad for us. And, but now when you look at the whole scope of that we package the majority of our food, our beverages, our beauty products, our healthcare products, our cleaning products, and then anything else that you buy is like double wrapped in this stuff. We have
Even at the Whole Foods or the other supposedly
health food markets.
Yes, exactly.
We have a big problem on our hands. And I think really the public is only beginning to discover this. So we co-founded Plastic Pollution Coalition back in 2009. But prior to creating it, I spent a year developing a proposal to go out and clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch with a cargo ship and 2 decommissioned fishing trawlers, because I had heard that there was, a glut of the fisheries were having a problem, basically because we've overfished the seas.
And before you go on, not everybody might know what the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is.
Oh, yeah.
So let's hit that real quick. I know my wife, who's a scientist, has actually been, on the ship out there and actually seen the gyre and seen what it looks like. And she said it's unlike anything you've ever seen.
Right. But I mean, so here's the thing. I spent a year developing a plan to go clean it up because in 2007, 2008, I thought that the Great Pacific Garbage Patch was an island that you could travel to where everything was floating on top of the water and that you could just collect it. My idea was to
scoop it up.
Scoop it up, chip it up, cold mold it into bricks. I had a whole plan. I was talking to people with machines that could do these different portions of it. And after working on that for a year, I had this wonderful opportunity coming up to pitch it to the new head of the Google Foundation. And 3 days before my opportunity to share it with her, I realized this was a Sisyphusian task, that it was not a floating island. And let me actually describe to you what it is.
Perfect.
So the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is one of 11 gyres in all the major oceans in the world. The Pacific Ocean, I think, has 3 gyres, but the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, or the Northeastern Pacific Gyre, is the largest. That just because of the way that the water circulates in the ocean, you begin to get a collection of things that are in the water. And while we describe marine debris, or NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, so part of the government, describes marine debris as materials that are washing in the ocean. They actually don't describe the plastic component. And what we've seen is in the last 15 years, and when I first gave my TED Talk, which was 2010, we've seen this expansion where it's now 70 to 90% of marine debris is plastic. So it is plastic pollution. And again, it's not an island. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch, the one we're talking about, the Northeastern Pacific Gyre, is spread out over 2,000 square miles. It is moving, depending.
Let's think about that for a second. 2,000 square miles of a bunch of plastic in the ocean, just circulating and consistently bringing more in.
Yes. Think about that.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Crazy. Think about that.
So it's not only floating on top of the water, it is in all the water strata. It is on the bottom of the ocean floor. We don't actually know how much. And depending on whether it's an El Nino or La Nina year, the latitudes change of where you find it. Now, what is also happening with the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and all of the plastic pollution that is washing around and swirling in the ocean is that it's washing up on island archipelagos and on the windward sides of coastal communities. So the ocean is addressing this plastic soup by trying to literally vomit it out every day. So that is what the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is.
There was an interesting point that you made in the TED Talk when you said they talked about materials. I used the word a moment ago, I can't think of it, but you're like, no, we need to call it what it is. It's pollution. And I like that because so often we sugarcoat things instead of calling them what they actually are.
Yeah. So one of our first campaigns, and it's still a major component of the work we do with Plastic Pollution Coalition, is call it what it is. So we took the model that was created And this is actually a deeper dive, interesting story. But so there's a model that was created that is the 3 Rs:
Okay.
reduce, reuse, recycle. Right?
Yep.
Well, that was created by industry.
Because they want you to reduce, but they want you to eliminate.
Well, and they want you to believe that it's possible to recycle plastic. So an important thing just to note about plastic is plastic was never designed to be recycled, and plastic is still not designed to be recycled. So don't be fooled by the numbers with the chasing triangular arrows on the underside or backside of products. Those simply identify the polymer type. They tell you whether it's polyethylene, terephthalate, or whether it's, polystyrene. That's it. And 7 is other.
What is other?
Everything.
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 So remember that. I want to reiterate that point. That it doesn't matter what the number is. It's not meant. It's never going to be recycled at a level that it's at currently. It might be reused, but it's always on a downward trend to downcycle, right?
It's all being downcycled.
Yeah.
Anything that's being used is being downcycled, but it's primarily being buried in the environment or dumped in the environment, which we euphemistically call landfilling, or it's being burnt, which we call a lot of things. We call it incineration, we call it waste to energy, we call it waste to fuel, we call it chemical recycling, we call it lots of things that sound good and people are investing in, but it's really just different forms of burning it because it's a carbon source. So it's being burnt. And the problem with plastic is that it poisons us and it creates pollution literally from the moment of extraction through manufacturing, production, our use, particularly when it's designed for single use. And then immediately it's a waste management issue where it's dumped in the environment, in the ocean, in our waterways, lakes, rivers, etc., or burnt. And when we burn it, we release dioxins and particulate pollution, so we poison ourselves again. And when it's produced, we poison ourselves. And when you look at that entire chain, it disproportionately impacts communities of color, Black communities, brown communities, indigenous communities, low income and rural communities, because these facilities for the entire chain are located in those communities or next to those communities.
We see that across the board, no matter what the industry is, but especially in the fossil fuel industry. One of my influences when I was starting in sustainable investing was a gentleman named Bill McDonough. And I got to spend an afternoon with Bill. He's a unique, wonderful person. And he wrote the tome on circular economy called Cradle to Cradle. And talk a little bit about what our opportunities are from a circular economy perspective, why we're missing it right now with plastics.
Well, we're missing it because there are so many false solutions.
Okay. That's a great answer because that's I talk about greenwashing often, right? And that's just another way to say, oh, look over here, we're trying to do this for you, while at the same time, we're just going to continue to make revenue.
Well, also the cradle to cradle model, and not to be, critical, because I think Bill's incredible. His work is wonderful and important, an important part of all of this. But that is based on the idea that you can recycle these materials.
Right.
But if you actually cannot recycle the materials, one, because they weren't designed to be recycled, and two, because there's no system or infrastructure to take them back, and three, because plastic is cheaper to buy virgin.
Yeah, that's the crazy part.
It is not a valued material. So it really also comes to maybe the conversation about we need to go beyond thinking about zero waste. We need to go to 100% valuable materials.
Right.
And this is something that we talk about a lot. What would it look like if we lived in a world, lived on a planet that valued all the materials that we use and designed with that value in mind? Now, nature and the planet have had millions of years to evolve so that there is something that exists that eats and utilizes everything, from the tiniest microbe to, bacteria, all of these things. And it's funny because daily people send us these, oh, here, the problem's solved. Here's a mealworm that eats plastic, or here's a bacteria that breaks it down. That's all lovely, but it can't do the quantity that we're talking about. And what's going on right now is that plastic is the petrochemical industry's plan B.
Right.
And they see the writing on the wall. Everyone's trying to divest from fossil fuels and move to clean, green energy, utilizing wind and solar. Solar, it's free.
Exactly.
It's free.
So what are they going to do? Instead of creating gasoline and other fuels, they're going to transition to the plastics.
And I mean, if you look at quotes from people in the plastic industry from, the 70s, they said the future of plastic is in the trash can.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew.
Oh, let's think about that. The future of plastic is in the trash can. They knew that they were going to continue to produce a product that was never going to be recycled, and it was just going to consistently make more.
Yeah. But can I tell you about Plastic Pollution Coalition too?
I want you to tell me about it. We've got lots of fun stuff to talk about here. We've got, we're decent on time, so let's go. Tell me about the coalition.
So, after I had this year of working on a plan to go out and clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, I realized this was a Sisyphean task, and I had to go back to the drawing board. I had begun to assemble a group of advisors, and it included Dr. Sylvia Earle, Dr. Enrique Sala, Captain Charlie Moore, Marcus Erickson, Anna Cummins, wonderful people who had been, many of whom had been out to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and seen, I'm sure what your wife saw too, which is there's not really that much to see.
Right.
It is spread out over so much, territory that it's just, if you drag a trawl behind a boat and then pull it up, you see what you gather in 30 minutes. And that's only what's visible and large enough for a trawl to collect it, again, not considering what's below 3 feet and on the floor of the ocean. So I put together an advisory group, and in learning from them, I realized I didn't want to focus my energy on cleaning this up. What I wanted to do is come together with other people I had met and figure out how to create an organization that would begin to communicate what was really going on.
Right.
And that is how we created Plastic Pollution Coalition back in 2009. We were a small group of co-founders. We were about 6 co-founders, and then founding member groups, which included Five Gyres, Algalita, and other organizations that were looking primarily at what was happening in the ocean. But we wanted to take it on land, and we wanted to take it upstream, and we wanted to start looking at how this was impacting human health, how this was impacting us along the whole chain. So we created a Plastic Pollution Coalition, and our mission statements evolved because we're in our 15th year now.
Which is really good for nonprofits.
Yeah.
A lot of times they start out on one and they keep going, but the evolution of it is important because the landscape changes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our mission is to raise awareness about the toxic impact of plastic pollution, and its impact on human health, the ocean, the environment, etc. But to create an alliance that was focused on just equitable, regenerative solutions.
Right.
So we have members in more than 75 countries around the world. We, in the last 5 years, have had a huge uptick of businesses joining us, which is super exciting. And I mean, I've been saying the whole time we've been doing this, this is the wild, wild west for solutions, because there are companies that are offering solutions that are based on regenerative materials, like utilizing seaweed, algae, mushroom mycelium, existing materials, stainless steel, copper, wood, paper, plant-based products. And what do those solutions look like? And how do we, in our work, uplift, refill, and reuse, and move away from that 3R model I mentioned before, which was it was created by industry: reduce, reuse, recycle. So the first project we did was we added a 4th R to the front of that model, which was refuse. And we encourage people to refuse plastic, to refuse single-use plastic every day as individuals. So we took this 3R model and we added a 4th R onto the front, which is to ask people to refuse daily. Refuse single-use plastic, refuse plastics whenever possible as an individual, at your school, in your place of business or work, and then bring that into policy.
I've got so many questions to ask because this is an issue that my wife and I have talked about for years because just the importance of it, starting off with her experiences and just, as soon as you open your eyes, you really start to see the prevalence of plastic literally everywhere. One of the interesting things, one of her best friends works in the water department in Ithaca, New York, and that's one of their major issues is microplastics in trying to filter out microplastics in drinking water. They found microplastics in the Mariana Trench. They found microplastics on the top of Mount Everest. And we've also found, of course, that it's in us, in just about every single one of us.
Yeah.
How do I say that in a way just to educate, but at the same time, what can we do? What are some actual on the ground things other than the refuse, reduce, etc. What are actual things that people can take away from this and say, here's one thing, or here's two things that I can do to make an impact?
I mean, I think one of the easiest things that people can do is I always carry a steel cup with me. So yeah, cheers.
We both have them. Cheers.
So I always carry a reusable steel cup with me. I brought some last night to the movie theater to see Beetlejuice. I bring them to picnics, to art openings, and to any event. And when friends invite me to a barbecue or something at their house, because I don't know what people are going to offer. So I always bring reusable steel cups with me. I also, my bag is over there, but I also carry a bamboo utensil set with me, and I like to drink iced tea. So I carry a couple stainless steel straws in that as well. So on an individual level, personally, in your work and what you do, or as a kid, or for your children, you can pack their lunch. And I would recommend food grade steel reusables that they bring back and you wash and you refill every day.
And they last forever.
They last forever and they can get banged up. It's okay. Also, I've met a lot of young people who now it's just status quo that they bring a reusable bottle with them, generally a steel reusable bottle, every day to school. And a lot of them personalize them. It's almost like a comfort cup or a comfort bottle with stickers. They paint on them, they draw on them. You've seen the prevalence and the excitement around these crazy giant Stanley cups.
And those refillers too, that you see now where you just set it down there and automatically refills it for you and it just makes it easy.
And I would say, also from an investment perspective, investing in reuse and refill models and systems is really important right now. It's really important because a lot of people have done them as pilots. There are pilots happening around that in Canada, in the European Union, in Southeast Asia, a lot of things happening in Australia with it, New Zealand. There are some things happening with reuse and refill shops now here. I've seen a number of them in different parts of Los Angeles, but even across the United States, I'm seeing them. I've seen them in Spain. I've seen them in Italy. I've seen them in France.
What was it that Churchill said? The Americans always do the right thing after they've tried everything else.
Right.
And I always find that interesting because you started off by talking Europe and Asia and different areas, and then you came around to the States. And I think that's really important because we need to be leaders when it comes to the next economy, the sustainable economy, the clean economy.
In all fairness, we were, in a sense, leading on some of this, and I feel like the pandemic industry used the pandemic as an opportunity to put holds on a lot of policy and legislation that had been passed. So to kind of kibosh it temporarily for a couple of years. What's bizarre to me is that the industry doesn't see the writing on the wall and begin to make much bigger investments and moves into reuse and refill models, and not ones that are based on reusing plastic.
Right. Well, and I think so. I started in this business 25 years ago, give or take. And when I started, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have podcasts, we didn't have even a big following for CNBC. And what's happened, back then, people would invest for long term. And the faster the information cycle has become, the faster our attention, or the shorter our attention spans have become. And the same thing has happened with investments. And so instead of investing in a company long term to create solutions like we're talking about, what we're seeing is short term speculation, because they only care about what the earnings are for that next quarter. And that is so short sighted. And it's partly why we've gotten into this mess that we're in.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting if you speak about it that way. I've watched people that I know invest and guide even investment funds, for people who are retired and things like that towards reusable, refillable, I'm going to call it clean energy.
We call it the next economy.
The next economy.
Yeah.
Okay. But so green, clean energy. When I say that, by the way, I'm actually not talking about nuclear, but that's another conversation. Yeah, just because I don't even use a microwave. So, okay. Because it makes food taste bizarre to me. And I don't, the science part of me is like, what are we doing to the molecules here? What's going on? And cheese comes out so weird. Anyway, but I've seen folks who are moving their portfolios into that kind of investment and seeing a higher profit than folks who are investing in, I'm going to call them sin stocks. That's what I call them.
There's a lot of people that call them sin stocks.
Yeah.
And from our experience, having done this is our 20th year in sustainable investing, we've consistently found that from a return perspective, it's at least competitive. And at the end of the day, if we're talking to somebody and we say, hey, would you rather invest in the traditional economy where you're investing in fossil fuels and coal and all these different things, or would you rather invest in where the economy is going? And if I told you that you were going to get a competitive return for it, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
And the vast majority of people will go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about a success story that you're especially proud of.
Oh gosh, there are so many. I'm very proud of a TEDx Great Pacific Garbage Patch we produced in 2010, where we archived all the talks. And actually, Van Jones gave a really powerful talk, which the TED brand then asked if they could put up on their website. So it's his TED Talk. And it's called The Economic Injustice of Plastic. And I go back regularly and watch it because it was not only spot on at the time he gave it in 2010, but it is even more spot on today.
We'll provide a link to that in the show notes.
In that he talks about how we perceive some people and some groups of people as being disposable. And that also allows these, we refer to them as sacrifice zones. And that also pertains back to what I'm talking about with plastic pollution and with fossil fuels, because when you look at Cancer Alley, I was just recently in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, meeting with Rise St. James and coalition member groups we have, and helping organize a meeting between them and John Legend. John Legend was interested in learning about that, but it's all interconnected. It's interconnected to the work he does for anti-recidivism and to try and, overhaul the prison system so that it's not treating people in this most horrible way, right? So this whole disposable people model I've seen in Houston on the Gulf Coast with the communities there and people who have to isolate in place in their homes and put wet towels around the doorways because there's a release of some totally noxious toxic gas, or even with the train derailment in East Palestine and central Pennsylvania and the reboot of the Ohio River Valley. Okay, we're just going to poison everybody in those communities again.
I grew up right between Buffalo and Niagara Falls, and we had Love Canal right around the corner. And what they've done is they've cleaned it up, and they've moved people back into that area. There was a school built over Love Canal.
Oh, God.
Back in the day, and kids were dying. There's a really good documentary that came out, actually a really good book that came out called Paradise Falls. If you haven't read it, it's really worth reading because you really get into the problems with regulation and the regulators not wanting to hear about it, and the misinformation coming from a chemical company that dumped it there, and the reality on the ground about kids dying. And eventually they made it happen, but it was not an easy process.
Yeah. Well, if we want to talk about films and documentaries and books, there's a great moment in Dark Waters, the film that was made with Mark Ruffalo, where he realizes something. He's playing Rob Below, the attorney. And he realizes something and comes home and says something to his wife. And there's just a very quick moment where their eyes dart around their entire kitchen and everything's plastic and Teflon.
Yep.
And they don't even say anything really out loud. You just watch their eyes dart around and you see what it's focused on. I mean, Teflon is super toxic, and your average person still has no idea. And they're using it to make waffles and cook omelets and cook food. And it causes birth defects in the babies of people who were working at the DuPont, like Dow Teflon plant. PFAS. They're forever chemicals. They're forever chemicals. And we're looking at this. I would also, if anyone is interested, I would recommend two other really great documentaries.
Do it.
Yeah, one is called The Story of Plastic. It was on Discovery. It may still be on like Warner Brothers Discovery. That is really great to understand where plastic and fossil fuels, where it's coming from and how it directly impacts frontline and fence line communities around the world. And the second one in my trilogy, I haven't seen the third film yet because it hasn't been made, but my second one in that trilogy of important films that everyone needs to see is a new film that was made by folks in Canada that's called Plastic People. And it is available right now. You can contact them if you want it. If your company wants to put a screening,
We'll put a link up there too.
And that talks about microplastics and the impact of plastics, plastic chemicals and microplastics on our bodies. And so I can talk about that a little bit.
Let's talk about that really briefly because we're a little short on time. But let's talk about microplastics and the fact that it's pumping through our veins as we speak.
Yeah. So they've now found microplastics in our arteries, in human hearts, deep in human lung tissue, in human brains, in placenta, both on the mother's side and the baby's side, and in testicles and penises.
Okay, that's scary enough as it is right there. So,
well, and then you have to ask, okay, what are the chemicals that are used to make plastics? Again, they're BPA. You might have heard, oh, this is okay because it's BPA free, but it may have been made with BPB or BPC or BPS or BPZ. So another bisphenol. And bisphenols are added to the carbon source to make plastic transparent, translucent, and rigid, so to form it. And then there's a whole other group of chemicals, and they're called phthalates.
Right.
And those are added to plastic to make it soft and like rubberize it, right? So it's in a lot of kids' toys and things like that. So those two groups of chemicals have both been identified as endocrine disrupting chemicals, and they have been linked in studies with humans, particularly BPA, which has been studied the most, but BPA and phthalates, to lower sexual function, sterility, infertility, to breast cancer, brain cancer, and prostate cancer, and to obesity and diabetes. So these chemicals, once we absorb them into our bodies, which we're doing on a daily basis, if we're eating anything packaged in plastic or drinking anything packaged in plastic, they make our bodies hold more fat.
And we have obesity epidemic.
Yes, we do.
So that's great.
Or not.
Not great. That's going to link into my last question, but I didn't want to go to my last question quite yet. I want you to say, how can people and organizations support the coalition?
Yeah. So Plastic Pollution Coalition can be supported actually just by supporting us directly in our work. You can make donations to plasticpollutioncoalition.org. There's donate buttons on our page, and we'd be grateful and really appreciate that. But again, like I said, we've had a lot of businesses join our coalition. So a business can also join our coalition or can go further than that and partner with us on a specific project. And we've done projects like that in the past. We've partnered, for example, with Absolute Vodka for a Plastic-Free July project that they did. Or we've partnered with, it's called Tocaya, which is a chain of Mexican food, where they did a burrito, a special burrito that was not wrapped in any plastic or packaged in any plastic. So, how can you help also or get involved? You can go to our site. You can learn more. You can sign up to join us as an individual or as a business or as an organization. You can watch our webinar series. We have a whole webinar series and we've archived all of those talks. So there may be ones that are of interest to you. A couple months ago, we did one that was specifically focused on regenerative materials with a number of our coalition members that are making things out of seaweed and algae and mushroom mycelium. So, there's really compelling information. We are a nominator for the Earthshot Prize. NOPLA was one of the winners of the Earthshot Prize, and they're doing a alternative. They're producing an alternative to plastic, which is plant-based. Which is non-toxic. So you are always looking for non-toxic and biobenign packaging materials, and even at home to eat and drink your own food.
Is there a source where somebody can go to find what is and what isn't? Is it on your site or is it somewhere else?
Yeah, there's a lot of information on our site under resources or get started. We have a whole primer that's called Single-Use Plastics Explained.
Super.
And we have some really incredible initiatives right now. One of them is called Filtered Not Bottled, and that is based on the money that was allotted to replace lead pipes across the United States. We are working with groups on the ground, encouraging cities and states, but mainly cities, to offer filters for people instead of plastic bottled water, while the lead pipe replacement is underway. And then additionally, encouraging cities and educating them and working with them to replace with copper or recycled copper pipes and not with plastic PVC pipes. Because we don't want a regrettable substitution to go in place of the lead.
That's right out of the frying pan into the fire, right?
Yes. Yeah. But and then also we have a project that's called the Global Plastic Laws Database that anyone can sign up and utilize, and it allows you to look up laws, existing laws that are in place, not just across the United States, but around the world.
Right.
Additionally, there's a project that we helped co-create, which is called the UP Scorecard. It's upscorecard.org. And it's called the Understanding Packaging Scorecard. And it came out of accelerators that we were part of and presented to at Google with their food lab. And now it is overseen by the Food Packaging Forum. They are part of our coalition. And what I love about this tool is it will let you go in as a business and look at, it looks at 6 different parameters when you're comparing different kinds of materials for foodware. And it includes both looking at plastic, not by weight, but by quantity.
Okay.
And it looks at climate impact. And most importantly, it looks at chemicals of concern in the material, which is key.
Right. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's in us knowing what makes it up is so important. So, knowing all of this bad stuff that we know, from plastics, from climate change to all this, and the evidence just we continue being bombarded by it.
Yeah.
What gives you hope?
Well, what gives me hope is that people are beginning to learn that there's an issue with plastic. So oftentimes, if I order something out anywhere and say, oh, I'd like a water, I'd like a this, no straw. Or make sure that something doesn't come in plastic when I'm ordering it. And then they'll say, oh, Is that because plastic is bad? Or, yeah, I heard plastic is bad. Or that's, oh, you're saving a sea turtle. The sea turtle had a plastic straw on its nose. People will say things like that, which makes me realize that, awareness is being raised, right? Is growing. Also, I'm seeing businesses, more and more businesses join us because they're concerned about this issue. So they are offering either a system solution or a material solution. And that's huge. That's a huge uptick. When we look at our social media reach, it's annually, it's more than 4.7 billion.
Wow.
People. So people are super interested in this issue. They are coming to us. We have knowledge and we are looking at the whole picture, which I think is also really important.
That's huge. That's a major impact right there. That's a major opportunity.
Yeah.
Dianna, thank you so much. I've enjoyed chatting with you, enjoyed meeting you today and learning more about Plastic Pollution Coalition. Please take some time, visit our website, talk more about it, talk about it with the businesses that you do business with. When you're doing your investing, think about the companies that you're investing in and how pollution or plastic is linked to them. I want to remind you, please make sure that you like this episode because I know that you're going to, and also make sure that you follow us on YouTube and all the other social media channels. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.